I hope all of you are having a good night. I just realized I didn't add something, so pretend you don't say anything. Just pretend you don't say anything. Hang on. Da, da, da. Okay, okay. I think that. Okay, that should have done that. This is why you keep everything hidden. Hooray! Hi everyone. Everything's fine. I did not just last minute finish my slideshow. I hope everyone is having a good day, good week, good night. Um, it has been a time, and welcome back to normal. Ish, we'll call it normal. We are doing books again today. Not A or Z. And oh, I need to turn that down. There we go. That way y'all can still hear it. I don't have to listen to it. Fantastic. Okay. So, let's get this started. I do have a shorter list of recommendations because despite having finished the book, I am running late. We'll talk about that in a second. So, as per usual, this is meant to entertain and inform, and I do not hold any of the rights for the works described, and I hope you enjoy. We are talking about We Hunt the Flame. Oh, dang it. I didn't relook up how to pronounce her name. Hang on, give me a second. Let me go check that right quick. If I remember correctly, it's how it looks, but also okay, Hafsa Faisal. It's not quite how it looks, or at least not for my head. Okay, and yes, so we are doing We Hunt the Flame. So stuff's not moving. Okay. Why? There we go. Okay. Yay, We Hunt the Flame, by Hafsa Faisal. I knew I needed to pull that up. So, publishing details. This was published in 2019 by Farrar Straus Giroux. It is part of a series. It is book 1 in the Sands of Arwaya? Duology. So, because I was poking around her website to make sure that nothing had changed between last time I covered one of her books and now, she writes duologies mostly, it looks like, because it looks like she has another one getting ready, and that makes me excited, because I only have one more of these, and I have the sequel to We Hunt the Flame. Like, I don't own it, but that's the book I haven't read, and then I will be caught up, I think. I don't think I've followed an author this closely since Tamora Pierce, so this is a lot of fun for me. So We Hunt the Flame. This is the original cover. This is the cover I have, for once. The illustrator is, I think it's Simone, not Simon, but Paradas. He works primarily for editorial clients, and has also done some stuff for like Uncharted 4, and he's done, I think it's he. They've done more than just book covers. In fact, they primarily don't do book covers, but they've done a couple. And it's physical drawing with digital coloring, and it's super pretty. And also, who did the lettering? I didn't check that. Hang on. Aaron Fitzsimmons and Ray Chappelle. They did great lettering on this. This is a fun font. I really like it. So about the author. This is the same info off of the last time, but just to cover it again. New York Times bestselling author, also wrote Tempest of Tea and A Steeping of Blood, which we have talked about both of those and how much I like them, and also runs a web design business. Also, according to her website, there should be another book out next year, so that makes me happy. And as is usual, as excited as I am by that, I also know that delays can happen. Life happens, but I'm super excited that that there will be more. I think I mentioned it with A Tempest of Tea, but her world building is really fun. This one, we'll get to it in a second, but the world is great. I am thankful I read A Tempest of Tea first, though. So what do you need to know? It's a dual perspective, excuse me. Oh. It's a dual perspective. It is dense. It's an adventure novel and fantasy politics. The other thing, and it kind of ropes into fantasy politics, is that it is how do I hang on, does it actually say in the book? Let me check the page of stuff. Okay. I feel better calling it fantasy Middle East. It's inspired by ancient Arabia. I know which book I was supposed to put on the recommended list. Gosh darn it, I'll put it there later. I have a thing on the recommended list that says settings, and the reason it says settings and vibe is because I can't remember what all of them are based off of. But this very much feels in the same vein as them, but different. So I'll talk about that when I get there. But the reason that isn't on this list is because I don't know enough about that to talk about it confidently. Like, it is a major part of it. I found it very interesting, but I am very much on the outside looking in. So, oh, wait, that's not spelled right. That's not spelled right at all. That should be an I. Hang on. I can't misspell my fantasy names. There we go. You saw nothing, everything's fine. Zafira, I'm like, wait a minute, that name is wrong. Zafira is the hunter. She pretends to be a man in a caliphate that diminishes the abilities of women and turns all of their triumphs to shame. So, women are kind of blamed for everything bad that happens. And so, in order to provide help to the small village, she pretends to be a man and hunts to bring in food. Even though this is a dual perspective book and we do get a lot of Nazir, he's not the main character. Like, as deeply interesting as both of these plot lines are, this is her book. Like, I don't know if the second one is his book, but this is very much so her book. And he is the B-plot. And he is a very interesting B-plot, in that he is still a main character, but desperately a B-plot. Nazir is the Prince of Death. He is the prince to the kingdom, to the Sultanate. And he's an assassin who is desperately trying not to feel so he can't be hurt. He is the soft-hearted assassin who, like, It's not the fun kind of soft heart. Let me start it with that. It's not the I'm gruff and grumpy but have a heart of gold and blah blah blah. No, it's the I'm having to do terrible things, and boy do I wish I didn't have a conscience and B feelings. Because if I didn't have a conscience and feelings, no one could hurt me. Because things hurting me don't hurt me. Things hurting people I care about hurt me. He is a wonderful character and a glorious problem. I like him a lot. These two are both a lot of fun. Like, are there dumb moments where you just kind of want to smack both characters upside the head and be like, look, here's the solution? Sure. But, like, I know people like that who the solution's right there, just do it. And no, and they feel very human is what I'm saying. So something you should need to know before I go to the next slide is this is a world that had magic and it's been lost. And the reason that is important is because I'm going to say I really like the magic in this book. But you have to understand that the magic isn't present in the same way it is in other books. It's different. Oh, excuse me. But, so those are your main characters. And now because I've had to click out of it, it's gonna act up. There we go. So this is a dual perspective. It's mostly an even back and forth. One chapter is her, one chapter is him. Until the last third of the book. Where we throw all sorts of organization out the window. Where you'll get shifts in perspective mid-chapter, but not at the chapter breaks. And you kind of just have to keep up with who's talking based off of where you are. There are hard jumps in setting and time that are not gentled. And I think that is a credit, not a knock. The way they're done is done very well. You feel, as the reader, you've lost the same amount of time as the character. I will say that you start noticing, so the dual perspective, you start noticing that, and the reason I say Nazir is not a main character, he really is a B-plot, is even when it's an even, one chapter's her, one chapter's him, one chapter's her, one chapter's him, most of her chapters are longer than his. And yes, it's because he's got a whole bunch more, like, secrets gnarled up in a ball that surround him because fantasy politics, we'll get there. But also, he just doesn't get the screen time that she does. And, you first notice when the shifts start not happening at chapters, when you start having 2 chapters of her and 1 chapter of him, and then you start getting several pages of him in the middle of one of her chapters, and then it'll go back to her, and then there'll be a chapter break, and if it's it does follow the standard. If there's a big break, it's a chapter break. If there's a small break, it's a break within a chapter. But hoo boy, when you get to the last third of this book, be prepared for some jumping perspective. So this is a dense book, and this goes right to what I just said. It starts slow with world building, and there's no glossary, there's no pronunciation guide. I checked this time. It is a problem with me because it means I'm going to be talking about this book and kind of avoiding some of the main points because I don't know how they're pronounced, and I don't want to mispronounce my fantasy words, and I don't actually know if they're fantasy words or if they're Arabic. So, welcome welcome to this is the problem with reading books like this. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop. It's just a known problem. It does hit a point where it all starts to move like an avalanche, but you have to do the build up. I will be very honest. The first like 150, 170 pages are the build up. It was rough, and I almost put the book down because, as interesting as I found the world, it was dense. It is dense in words. It is dense in establishing the world. It's why I'm a little surprised this is only a duology, but also sometimes that's what you need. You need something that you can have two of and then set down. That being said, partially because of that denseness, you hit a point where it stops being a slog, and you've kind of crested that hill, and it all starts moving downhill, and it speeds up and it speeds up, and you hit that final third of the book, and it's just a fly to the end. It's very much I don't want to set the book down, I want to finish reading this. That being said, this is a book with a lot of... If you've read a lot of fantasy novels, if you've read a lot of fantasy novels that take place in not modern, or modern adjacent. So if you read anything that's like, pick an ancient culture, Greek, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Norse to a lesser extent, like, you can see the shape of what is happening from a long way off, but how it happens is satisfying. And there was a at the very, very, very end, there's a quote-unquote big twist. We'll call it a big twist. It wasn't. It was pretty obvious once a couple other things got revealed. But it was executed well. And I'm going to say there is something comforting about seeing something coming and being satisfied with how it's executed, versus seeing something coming and then we're supposed to be shocked by it. Because it didn't feel like you, the reader, are supposed to be shocked by this. It was, no, the characters were surprised, but you, the reader, there were some warning signs thrown up pretty quick. Oh, the other thing to be aware of is, no, we're gonna hold off on that. I'll mention that later. Alright, so this is an adventure novel. This is a good old-fashioned find the thing, save the people, save the cheerleader, save the world, that kind of thing. The thing that makes it fun is the characters in the setting. So this is a pretty stock... This is gonna sound like an insult. It's not, guys. Sometimes you just want a good old adventure, and when the hook for your adventure is find the thing to save your people, and it's thrown in a couple of different ways for a couple of different characters, like, that's a traditional story hook. But what makes it interesting is you've got great characters. You've got hang on. You've got not Nazir. Hang on, I gotta find it. Not Nazir, the other one. can't remember the general's name. I just remember I liked him as a character. He's both the most annoying character ever and also Altair? Yeah, Altair. Might be Altair. I'm not sure. I pronounced it Altair in my head. But he's a blast. You've got a whole bunch of like great characters. And the world feels populated. You get by the end of the book you get maybe 18 named characters, which sounds like a lot, but hoo boy, for a world that feels so populated, that feels like a reasonable number. Like, I only have to keep track of 18 names and most of them don't overlap. Keyword most. When Benjamin shows up, you're like, ah, that name overlaps with nothing. So no, it is a wonderful adventure. Your setting, by the time you get to your main setting, which again is like over 100 pages in, it's I'm trying to talk about this without spoiling it because so much of what makes this book good is the build. It's the build and then the tip and then the rush. It's a roller coaster. It's a very basic one hill roller coaster of a book, and it is done very well. You do end up with an adventuring party, if you can call it that, of, let's see, if I was gonna make a D&D party out of it, you've got a fighter, a rogue, a ranger, an artificer, and another fighter, maybe a paladin. No, a second fighter. Yeah, probably a second fighter. Although he could just be a swashbuckler rogue. Actually, no, that's what it is. It's a second rogue, but it's a swashbuckler. That's your party. Trying to find a thing. You'd think that lineup would be stacked. That lineup is a mess. And then it is a fantasy politics. So without spoiling everything, the politics are both the whole point and not the point. But the politics are an ever-present driving force. Almost all personal motivations are wrapped around politics in some way. Zafira is trying, her big political motivation is that she's a girl doing something that is probably not what a girl should be doing, and while her friends and family believe in her, those that know she is the hunter, if anyone else knew she was a girl, they would immediately blame her for anything bad that happened ever. Like, and it's ridiculous, but it's how it's presented. So it's her standing up for women in that caliphate, and Nazir is a prince, so, and an assassin. So you know how those things are like inherently politically motivated, and I've literally read another book about that with Assassin's Apprentice. Yeah, this is that, except instead of being fantasy Europe with an assassin. It's fantasy Middle East with an assassin. um, and the political machinations are very much different. Yeah. It's there are a lot of plot points that are specific to it being a political adventure, but also they come into their own. All of the characters, but especially Zafira and Nazir, come into their own separate from the politics of it all. Like, don't get me wrong, they're shaped by the politics. They have to be. They live in a society. But also, where do you bend to? Where do you stand out from? Where do you grow a spine? That kind of stuff. So that is a lot of fun. Um, that is a lot of fun. I highly recommend this one. Let me put it that way. If you don't like slow starts, the first 150 pages or so, read them 2 chapters at a time. Like, as long as you're not putting weeks in between those chapters, like if you only read 2 chapters a day or something, that's fine. That'll get you good, and then you'll hit like that 150, 170 page mark, and it'll start moving, and it'll be easier to read at that point. Again, it's just a establishing the world and who the characters are. It's nice. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm so sleepy. It's nice to read a slow book. I feel like the last few I've read have been easy reads, and this one was very much not, and I don't I kind of miss that sometimes. Let's go on to recommendations. This is setting and vibe. I do think all of these are oh, I could have added, okay. I just thought of 2 more that would fit fantasy Middle East setting. But let's start with these, and big old caveat on the Brian Jacques. So, Blood Red Horse by K.M. Grant is set around the Crusades, so less fantasy, but also very much fiction. Not that the Crusades weren't fiction, but the story is fictional. It is all about the horse, but the horse is not technically your POV character, but it's all about the horse. Ever by Gil Carson Levine is it's a retelling of a fairy tale, but unlike the rest of Gil Carson Levine, which are your traditional European fairy tales, this one is not. And it is very apparent both in how the story is told and how the characters act. Because they don't act how you would expect Gail Carson Levine characters to act. That feels fair. I really like it. To be fair, I'm a sucker for 99.9% of all of the books Gail Carson Levine wrote, but I like Ever. Like, I know a lot of people don't, but I like it. And then Voyage of Slaves. This is the 3rd book in a trilogy. And I had to look up if it was this one or The Angel's Command. Neither of which I don't think... One of them takes place in Spain. One of them takes place off the coast of Italy. I think this is the one that's off the coast of Italy, but there are characters and scenes I distinctly remember and that is why this one is here, is more for vibe. I don't remember if the setting is right. It may all be off the coast of Italy and not the Middle East, but it matches the vibe, and it's very much fantasy, because it is still Ben and the dog. Is Ben the dog? Things I haven't thought about in a long time. Hang on. Let's see. Cast away of the Flying Dutchman. Ben and Denmark. Okay. The dog's name is Denmark. Okay, that's what I needed to double check, was what's the dog's name. But yes, this is the third book in the trilogy, and you really should read the first two. And then the one I forgot to add to this, which really should be added, is King of the Wind, which is... It's about horse racing. Hang on. I can tell you who wrote it. King of the Wind. Marguerite Henry. Of course it's Marguerite Henry. Fantastic horse books. It is, the full title is King of the Wind, the story of the Godolphin Arabian. So, fiction, not fantasy. And then if you want other things that feel similar, but move a bit faster, and you don't mind... Excuse me. You don't mind a series. How do I explain this? Tamora Pierce, who primarily writes quartets, has a series. Has two main series. She has Tortal and she has The Winding Circle. Or Imelin. I don't actually remember how that series is labeled. I usually call it The Winding Circle. Anyway, so there is the Circle of Magic series, which is the first quartet, and then there is the Circle Opens quartet, which is the second quartet out of The Winding Circle. And if you like We Hunt the Flame, or if you want something similar in vibe, I need to emphasize that. Then books 2 and 4 of The Circle Opens, which is oh gosh, Shatterglass is 4. Is it just called Magic Stones? That can't be right. No, it's Street Magic. Right? Hang on, I gotta find it. Yeah, it's Street Magic. Melting Stones is a different book. Still by Tamora Pierce. Street Magic and Shatterglass both fit the same vibe. Street Magic is a bit more of a... we're here for now to solve a problem, but also I can't help but help people. And Shatterglass is a murder mystery. So, there you go. And they have 2 of my favorite main characters because I'm a sucker for them from the first quartet. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about fantasy politics. And why I accidentally forgot to put Assassin's Apprentice on here when Absolutely, that fits into fantasy politics, but let's go down the list I did put. Cinder by Marissa Meyer is the sci-fi retelling of Cinderella, except the prince is actually a POV character for part of it. And once again, when you have princes as POV characters, fantasy politics just kind of falls into your lap. Oath of Fealty, which is the first book of the sequel series to the Deed of Paxenarian called The Legacy of the Paladin. I'm not going to explain why, because reasons. But if the Deed of Paxenarian had fantasy politics, The Legacy of the Paladin, which starts with Oath of Fealty, is fantasy politics. It doesn't have fantasy politics. Fantasy politics is the point. You've got a new king on the throne who's not fully accepted. You've got the white sheep of a family who inherited her very evil family's estate. You've got princes who are trying not to be assassinated. You've got people trying to do good and people trying to do evil, and it's a lot. Also, if you read Deed of Paxenarian first, you already know about 90% of all of your POV characters for the Legacy of the Paladin, and you probably like 90% of those that you know. So, like, you're kind of built in to already be invested in these characters, so even though it is way more fantasy politics than the Deed of Paxenarian ever was, and that's saying something, I was already invested because I already liked the characters. So I'm like, yeah, I'll deal with the fantasy politics of it all. And then Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey, which is kind of a softball here because Dragonflight doesn't have a ton of fantasy politics in it. It doesn't have none. It is driven by it, but compared to some of the later books, this one is lighter. It is the first book in the Dragon Riders of Pern. It follows Lessa, and Flar. Yes. It's Falar and Memneth. Not Fnor and Canth. Yeah. It's a bit more of a romp than... Look, of these three, the least serious one is not Cinder, it's Dragonflight. Dragonflight is way more, not of a silly story, but of a rompy, fun time story. Which is really weird, because one of these is a YA novel. It's not the one that I would consider the easiest to read out of these three. Don't get me wrong, Cinder is a lot of fun, but it is not a light story. And like, as weighty as Dragonflight can be, it's a lot more of a swashbuckling adventure-y story than Cinder is, and like Oath of Fealty is like 99% fantasy politics. Like, yes, there is plot, yes, it is fun, yes, it moves, but hoo boy, is that one dense. I would also put Assassin's Apprentice on here, because that one absolutely fits Nazir's side of the story very well, and is all about fantasy politics. So I would highly recommend that one as well. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the fact that of all of the things that I have sideways learned about and slanted my way into via fiction, this isn't one of them. I'm never actually that's true for the most part. I'm rarely disappointed when I wind up reading books that are either based around or have parts that take place in fantasy Middle East. I usually really enjoy them because they are different. They are not the structures I am used to, and therefore I find them interesting. But by that token, I very rarely look beyond. So it's not a space I'm knowledgeable in. It's not like I can be like, oh, here's the tropes, or here's the through line of a Greek myth that's layered into this book, or here's how we subverted this normal fairy tale. Normal fairy tale. Fairy tales are universal. Excuse me. Fairy tales are told worldwide. There is no quote unquote normal. But when I say normal, I mean European, specifically the Brothers Grimm and French fairy tales, because that is where most people know those, and they know Hans Christian Andersen's, or at least they know three of his. Yeah, three. Little Mermaid, Steadfast Tin Soldier, and Thumbelina. Those are typically the ones people know. Although they may not know the Steadfast Tin Soldier is his. But the shape is different. And I like it. It's the same reason when I read Moribito, the first two books, which were translated, I really liked them because they were not Western novels. They didn't read the same. The expectations weren't the same. The character trajectory wasn't the same. And they didn't have happy endings. They had satisfying endings. And I think that there is a big difference between something having a happy ending and something having a satisfying ending. And if you ask me which one I prefer, I will tell you 100% of the time it's a satisfying ending. I don't need everything to end in rainbows and sunshine if it concludes in a way that I'm satisfied. I can be content knowing the world spins on if where you have left me is, even if it's in the midst of a tragedy, if you show me that they can be okay, you don't have to show me them being okay, if that makes sense. I will say that has been my fun also. I've been reading both Japanese and Chinese light novels. Yes, there's a difference. Uh, so, um, but both of them have some similarities in that they are distinctly not Western stories. And once you come to grips with the fact that this story is not going to be what you think it's going to be, and it's not going to build the way you expect it to, it makes it a lot of fun. Um, I will say, so far, the Japanese novels are easier to read because people typically only have one or two names. And the Chinese novel, look, Chinese light novels and Russian novels both need flashcards for your people's names. Like, I didn't ever think I would compare, like, Heaven Official's Blessing to Crime and Punishment, but oh boy, do those two live in the same world of, I need flashcards so I can keep up with all the names these people have. Um, point being, when it is taking inspiration from or based in a culture that I am not very familiar um, with tropes I am not familiar with. It is always a little interesting as well as difficult for me. Not not because I dislike it and want it to fit the mold I'm used to, but because I have to fit my abilities as a reader into a new mold. So the book shouldn't fit me, I need to change to fit the book, is what I'm saying. And sometimes that's easy to do. Like I would say because it is still a horse book, let's be real. Let's talk about King of the Wind for a second. Because it is still a horse book and therefore it follows horse book logic, it is very easy for me to slip into King of the Wind because it feels like a Western, but not. Like, there are things that are decidedly not a West, and by Western I do mean cowboy Western in this sense, not Western as in Western world. But at the same time, it is decidedly not that. We Hunt the Flame could be... Oh, what can I put it up next to? What's another just find the thing, save the world type book? It doesn't really fit the Gamage Cup. Well, that's not fair. I'm not putting it up against Lord of the Rings. If only because that's also not the point of Lord of the Rings. It's literally the opposite of, here's the thing, go get rid of it. Not go find the thing to save the world. Geez, you know it's a trope, but at the same time... Jeez, off the top of my head. Arthurian myth. Let's take it back to something basic. Look at your basic Arthurian myth. And Excalibur and the blade that cuts and the scabbard that heals. You have that kind of story where I can't tell you how many books based off of Arthurian legend or Robin Hood I've read. Dozens at least, and that's not including like the Squire's Tale series, which has like 8 to 10 books in it, and that's what it's about, is Arthurian legend. If I get even an inkling of, oh, that's what this is, I can plot a course real quick and see how well it meets my expectations. We Hunt the Flame, there were some tropes I caught really, really early, and I'm like, I'm gonna plot that course. But there were a lot of things that, because I wasn't familiar with, I didn't expect. And there were things where so I mentioned Benjamin earlier. I don't want to spoil it, but Benjamin's not super spoilery. He is not human. Let's put it that way. Like, you already know this takes place in the same world as Tempest of Tea, vampire sort of thing. Yeah, cool. Benjamin is not human. He's not a vampire either. I kept trying to pin him into a Western fantasy equivalent, and he sort of fit. not completely. And that was a me problem, not a writing problem. And I kind of enjoyed that. It's less of, how do I explain this well? It's less of fitting into a shoe that is too small and more of just fitting into a new shoe that you need to break in. It's not that there's anything wrong with the shoe, it's that you haven't worn it enough to, you know, fit the shape of it. Like, that's another great example. Shoes shaped to your feet, not vice versa. But also, like, the new shoe, there's nothing wrong with the new shoe. What's wrong is your foot isn't used to it. There's nothing wrong with a story based off of a culture that I'm not familiar with, even if it is a fantasy version of said culture. The problem is I'm not familiar with it. That's a me problem. I'll be honest, every time a Sultana was mentioned in this, my brain went to Final Fantasy XIV and Nanamo. Because I love her. Like, I know it's a real thing, it's not a fantasy thing, but also, that's where my brain went. So yeah, I highly recommend We Hunt the Flame. I almost would suggest it as a second duology, even though it was written first, and start with A Tempest of Tea, because it's just an easier read, and then if you decide you like the world, read this. But to be fair, that is basically fantasy London. And this is not. This is fantasy Middle East. So there's a big difference. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I need to find my book for next go round, but I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good night.